Buddhism, Hinduism, the Kabbalah of Hebrew. We've done the whole Bible except for a couple of books in the Bible. We've covered everything. And in fact, several weeks ago, we did 2 or 3 weeks on Islam and Allah and Ahmad Halusi. I mean, in order to balance and see where everybody was coming from. And then we've studied, in terms of astronomy and things. But just within a couple of weeks ago, oh my God, look who's coming in here. It is Ethel and Albert back from, is he with you?
He's with me, he's parking the car.
Oh my God. Excuse me.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. We have to get out of vacation mode.
Would you hit pause, please? Did you hit pause? Excuse me, I have to show them where pause is. Everybody bear with me. Okay. But anyhow, last week, we have been discussing the word why, basically as to, what you are, what I am, and why are you here? What happens? I mean, what is the purpose of all this? Living and dying, and then what? And we spent a lot of time in identifying the fact that your body is a creation of your mother and father. But there is another part of you that is not a creation of your mother and father, and that enters into the fetus at the time of gestation, and it enters in through the pineal gland. And that's you. That's the real you. And that this light, at the time that the body ceases, this light leaves. Where does it go? How does it go? And so we study the world of quantum physics to understand this. That, you can't study religion to understand about life because they don't know anything about life. Basically, what religion is a superstitious approach to science from the Middle Ages. And in discussing things and calling things spirit that are actually subatomic particles, that was all they could do, and I understand that, but we have a responsibility as we evolve to where we have to drop those things and start saying, no, wait a minute, now we understand what this hidden activity is. And last week we were talking about the possibilities inherent in the procedure of one entity controlling another by electrical manipulation of the brain or brain areas. And we used as examples animal studies. Rats and monkeys have been used, as well as one famous instance we discussed in which they implanted a wire into the brain of a bull, and then they had a bullfight, and the matador stood there, and as the bull charged him, he just pressed a button on his belt, and the bull stopped. And actually, then they discussed that the wire had been inserted in a part of the brain that says, calm down. The one thing, and Joan was concerned about it after, and she came up to me and she wanted me to express to you that both her and I are totally against animal experimentation. I guess you would say except in the most extreme case for medical purposes, and then only under strict supervision guarding against pain, etc. I mean, also, we've been looking at, like slaughterhouse things that go on there, and when you see the way that we do these things without, being willing to spend a little money to guard against suffering, becomes so obvious as to why we have such terrible things go on in this world. But I wanted at least to discuss with you the fact that these tests were carried out and did present proof to us that it is possible for one entity to change the activities of another by electrical stimulation. I told you about the colony of monkeys, and they had one monkey who was he'd go into these rages, so they inserted a wire in his brain, and then they put a switch on the wall. And this one female monkey knew that every time she hit the switch, she'd calm him down. So, I mean, here, this monkey go into a rage and screaming and fighting and beating up everybody, and she'd say, oh, there he goes again, and she'd walk over and she'd flip the switch, and he would stop. So here was a whole behavioral pattern which was changed by external stimulation, see. Now, this is in no way to suggest that persons on this earth doing this to one another, though that's been done in medical experiments and in advanced civilization. But looking logically, could an advanced civilization change the activities of people on the earth through introducing different angles of electrical stimulation that touch the brains of people. Now, you know, I could say, okay, years ago you might say, oh, that's too far out. You know, we can't talk about stuff like that. You shouldn't talk like that anymore because, I mean, we are a primitive race on the planet Earth, and yet we've begun cloning, we've begun teleportation, we've launched experiments into the universe and so forth and so on. So we know, even though we're primitive, that these things are possible. As a primitive people who invented a light bulb 100 years ago, I mean, think of these same possibilities with a civilization that invented a light bulb 25,000 years ago. And then you start thinking, well, you know, there is a realm of possibility, because what I'm talking about is, if you believe in what you call God or a higher power, how then logically does this God or higher power change the ways of people upon the earth? You'll find out that the only way that it can be changed is by some form of electrical stimulation to the brain. Okay? And that would happen at a particular, and could only happen at a particular season of the universe. In other words, you have an opportunity to have snow at this particular season of the earth. Only at this particular season of the earth, in this particular hemisphere. You cannot have snow in this hemisphere at this point of the earth during August or July or June or anything like that. You can't have it. It's not possible. But you can have if you wait until January, February, December, something like that. So in the same way, now that's the earth. And you have the seasons of the earth, which are 12 months, and you can have different situations occur, but you have to wait. You cannot go swimming in a swimming pool in February, obviously, but you can in August. You have to wait until the season is appropriate. Well, you have a bigger thing now. Actually, you have yourself here as a human being, and you have 12 cranial nerves. Then you have the earth, where you have the 12 seasons. But now you've got the universe, and I'm drawing a line. You know, there is no line around it. But now you have the 12 ages. I mean, you have the 12 seasons, which are 30, you have 12 months, which are 30 days in each month, and you have the 12 ages, which are 2,600 years. But you have to wait for a specific, particular season or age for the angle of electromagnetism that comes to the earth to be right, so that it can impact the gates of the brain, throw them open, the ones that should be open, close the ones that should be closed, in order to change the behavior of the people on the earth. Because, as it says in the Bible, the fall occurred when angels or sons of God intercoursed with women, earthly women. Well, you know, we understand mythology when we see it. That's mythology, angel. But what it's talking about is that there was an angle of light, many angles of light at a particular time, that came in at a wrong angle, impacted the minds or the brains of people, and caused a serious defect. And what you have always heard as original sin was actually a defective angle of light. But that defective, or that course, can only be corrected during this particular age, which is called the Aquarian age, when the angle changes. I mean, there's a logical explanation for all of this stuff. It doesn't, your future, your life, doesn't belong in a church somewhere with people in robes and chanting and all of this stuff. It belongs in a place where you can understand what you are, what life is about, and how it works. I mean, you're not going to get in your car and chant or say a prayer or anoint it or put smoke on it. No, you're going to drive it because you know how to. And it's the same thing here. You've got to know how to live. You've got to know how to exist. You've got to know how to operate within the realm of life, say. So science has experimented with animals and people. By throwing a switch, they've effectively caused the change in the person involved. And what is the Aquarian age? The Aquarian age is the switch that is thrown, that stimulates the human brain from a new angle and causes a peaceful coexistence where there was none before. And how can you prove it? You can prove it as a race of people. You went for 499,900 years in darkness. And then 100 years ago, you created a light bulb. 100 years ago, you made a light bulb. So for 499,900 years, you walked around. Something happened that caused you to understand how to make a light bulb, a gate was open. And then you made all of this stuff, and now you've got all of these things going on where you're doing all these tremendous things because something changed. There was a switch thrown that stimulated your ability to understand. Electrodes have been inserted into the brains of people who, severe epileptics, have had electrodes. In a book, The 3-Pound Universe, it talks about a woman who was given 1.2 milliamperes to the right amygdala, and she was just sitting there playing a guitar. When they threw the switch, she threw the guitar. I mean, she went nuts. And then came down from this rage. Other people who have had this happen to them say they experience hallucinations or deja vu or illusions. And then what they found, what was interesting, is that after they had these mood changes or behavior changes, they never attributed them to the switch or to the electrode. They felt it was them. It was part of their personality. But one of the interesting things that the scientists found in experimenting with people, not with animals, experimenting with people, is that what happened by this electrical stimulation was memories returned. And this indeed, the coming stimulations that I'm talking about from above, will actually subject you to recalling memories. I do this, and I've done it here before, but it's important for you to understand. And, it's important for you to see because, we're not talking about something that's not connected. You have Pegasus in the sky, which is a white horse. And Pegasus' father is Poseidon, who is the god of the sea, making Pegasus a white seahorse. And Pegasus in the mythology is important to Mnemosyne, who's the goddess of memory. So you have the white seahorse, Pegasus, who's responsible for memory. You go into the human brain, you have the hippocampus of the brain. The word hippocampus means seahorse. The organ, according to Stedman's Medical Dictionary, is white in color. You have a white seahorse, and the hippocampus is responsible for memory. So there you have Pegasus in the sky, the hippocampus in the brain, both exactly the same. And then you hear Jesus is coming back on a white horse, because in the center of a hippocampus is something called Ammon's horn. Ammon is also known as Amen. And in the book of Revelation, Jesus is called the Amen. So obviously Jesus is coming back on a white horse. This particular organ is situated in the middle of the hippocampus, which is going to restore memory by the change of the angles of light coming down from above. It's logic. Has nothing to do with religion. Religion doesn't exist in the universe. Religion only exists where one group of people tries to control the lives and fortunes of another. That's all religion is for. It has no other purpose. So maybe we can get to understand that we're really looking for, when we pray or we ask for a change in behavior, is actually an electrical stimulation from an outside source. In other words, you get and pray. Then you say, give me the wisdom, give me the understanding. The only way that can occur, if you have a stimulation to the brain to change a particular part of your brain so you understand what you didn't understand before. That's what you're asking for. You're like the monkey in the cage saying, flip the switch. Get me out of here. Or change something. Calm me down. Get me, do anything, whatever. Or let me understand what's going on. You're asking for an electrical stimulation from an outside source to a particular part of your brain that will affect the desired result. So we look at life on the planet Earth where we live. For as long as we can look, for as long as you've been alive, this world, we've read of violence, of torture against people, animals, and nature, and realize that our colonization of Earth has not been good. You and me have colonized the Earth, but we have not acted as we were supposed to act. There has been a defect. There has been something radically wrong. You don't take a place that is built so beautifully for you to have fun on, to enjoy, and then wreck it, which we've done. And then share it with other people who you can love with, you can enjoy with, you can laugh with, and rape and kill each other. But that's what we've done. And in the middle of all of this, we got churches all over the place. Religious people telling us. We've drenched the earth with blood which has flowed out of violence. We have polluted it with chemicals. We have bombed it with atomic bombs. And in all of this, we've provided a place of pleasure for some. But each one, regardless how much pleasure, finds that they're really eliminated at an early age. Everybody dies at 80 or 90. I'm going to tell you a very secret. 80 or 90 years is a baby. A baby. But we have so screwed up everything that we die at such an early age as a baby. It's like infanticide, where people live and understand life and understand how to live and understand the science of living. They don't, 2, 3, 4, 500 years. And then shoot off and do it again. We find here even people who have been rewarded kind of with money and so forth. They spend their lives fighting to defend what they have and constantly striving for more. And it's stress, stress. And, everybody comes on Sunday and watches a football game or whatever and then dreads Monday morning because you got to go back into it. But children and people who cannot compete live in terrible poverty. But clans like ants gather around their country and keep the others out, regardless of the poverty. In other words, what I'm trying to say to you is that, you'll see these churches built in these remote places and people living in cardboard, under cardboard. And it doesn't make any difference because they're not part of our country. We're so clanized, cultish. So we have not colonized the planet as it was intended. So now, stimulation is arriving via Aquarius on a massive global level. Ready or not, here I come. And the electrical stimulation to change the way we act in regards to one another, the change that will cause parts of the great economic empire, which has meant so much to us, will collapse. So we have two forms of electrical stimulation. One from the universe, shown as Aquarius, a time of mind change. And then we have a second kind of electrical stimulation, people who seek it, people who deliberately throw the switch, as did the monkey, so as to bring forth peace. There was an interesting thing about it, what I was telling Joan about how they had all of these rats, and they had these little things in there, and each of the rats had a little button they could push. And they felt that there would be some problem with this, that the rats would not go near the button because it could probably bother them when this electrical current went in. But they were shocked because they found out that the rats loved it. Because the wire was in what is called the pleasure center, and the rats would keep going there. They didn't want to eat, they didn't want to sleep, they didn't want to drink, they didn't want to sex, anything. They just wanted to keep getting zapped. Because it was hitting the pleasure center. And so that's basically what this act of meditation we talk about is. It's coming to the pleasure center to get zapped. It's coming to the pleasure center to get hit with this electrical stimulation. Then there is this great command center that I've told you about, which is called the Great White Lodge, where you receive not only stimulation, but the light particle is directed. When you leave your body, either your light particle is directed to another body or taken back to where you came from. That's another story for down the road, which we'll get to very soon, though. So all of these commands are covered biblically and in other ancient documents, and they're covered and they're described as light. But don't think of it as light that you commonly consider light. People will say, oh, I died, I saw a great light. Well, that's your brain. Because light is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about electromagnetism. We're talking about a stimulation of electromagnetism coming through the universe. It's invisible. Indeed, it becomes an angle of light. And what is an angle of light? An angle of light is a photon, which is a messenger particle. Now, in order for the light to arrive at a proper angle and for the desired effect to be reached, there must be a change in planetary alignments. If you have the planets lined up so that the energy is coming this way and it's not doing the job, it's simply passing through your bodies, but it's not throwing the gate. But on the other hand, if the angle starts coming this way and then it throws open the gate, you're talking about a correct planetary alignment for the desired effect to be reached. The planets align differently, cause a different angle to impact the Earth. The switch is thrown, it causes a change in behavior. And that's what you've already started to see in some instances. And you've seen it in changes in governments, and you've seen it in, for God's sake, you see things that, people, holistic medicine is a perfect example. You know, everybody's taking all carrot juice and all this crazy stuff, and they would never go near this stuff. Well, what's going on? They're taking these pills and herbs. There's a whole complete mind change. But that's only one small fact. It's in everything. It's in the very base of what they call New Age. It's people trying to find something that is logical, something that's real, something that is inherent in life and in nature itself. The Aquarian age is a passover from one behavioral pattern to another. You were in darkness in the old age. As Aquarius begins to move closer, its effects begin to be felt. Gates are opened, and as gates are opened, behavior is changed. Understanding occurs where understanding didn't come before. So as I said earlier, all of a sudden you learn how to make a light bulb, you learn how to make airplanes and cars and all of these things. I mean, in the Bible stories of going across the desert, they could have taken a plane. I mean, the technology was there, but they had to evolve. And they had to wait until these angles of light were able to open the gates in the brain so they could understand this stuff. Something has changed behavioral patterns in human beings, or else you wouldn't be sitting here listening to this. One switch was thrown, and you started to see the strange. And all the switches haven't been thrown because you couldn't take it. All of the gates cannot be opened at once. Winter doesn't give way to summer. You've got to have spring. There has to be a gradual change, and that's what's going on now. That's why you see all the upheavals, and that's why you see all of the things occurring, and that's why everybody's getting all worked up about this Y2K thing. Isn't it amazing how the very things that we create then stand waiting to possibly destroy us? We don't even understand. We created these things, and yet we don't understand what could be the ramifications of this. It's like atomic energy. Atomic energy, we can light millions of homes, or we can kill millions of people. The change that brings forth at the Passover to a new behavior is signaled by signs in the sky that are blazing in light for us to see. That you're not left here walking around trying to say, you know, how do I know this is going to happen? I mean, what am I supposed to, I mean, you've got above you a ceiling, which is the sky, which is totally etched out by a higher intelligence who talked about these things, knew exactly how they were going to line up, and set this up in documents for you to look at. When you see this, get ready. Not that anybody's saying, look, I'm going to make this happen. It is a natural phenomenon. People could tell you, who lived thousands of years ago, what was going to happen. That's why Nostradamus is not that big. People could tell you thousands of years ago what was going to happen in 1999 by the positions of planets because of the angles of light and how it would induce either war or whatever it would induce to come out of people. There are signs. And these signs mean that when a particular alignment occurs in the sky, you can be assured that the biblical or other ancient prophecies are about to take place. The signs will usher in a Passover from one form of human behavior to another. Now, there's another change about to take place. This is January 24th, 1999. Okay? About a month and a half. Isn't that great? I mean, usually people talk about, well, 100 years or 200 years, because everybody will be dead. And you know, nobody's going to know whether they're telling the truth or not. I'm telling you, a month and a half this is going to happen. You know, isn't that true? You go to all these churches, oh, God, you know, the coming of it. In a month and a half, something's going to happen. And what's going to happen is that Pluto and Charon are going to pull out of the orbit of Neptune and place themselves in the position as the doorway to the next world. And it's going to happen on March 15th, 1999. And what is so spectacular about it is that it proves, it's the first thing that you've ever seen, that proves without a shadow of a doubt the writings from people thousands of years ago, because the people of ancient Greece told us thousands of years ago there is Hades or Pluto, and there is Charon, who is the boatman who takes you across the river Styx. And we thought, oh, well, that's interesting, that's a nice story, that's a myth, and nobody ever paid any attention to it. Until 1930, we discovered a planet. It was the farthest planet out at the end of the universe, and we called it Pluto. But there was no Charon. But then in 1978, a guy named Jim McNeil discovered something. As Charon is a small gray boatman, he discovered a small gray satellite orbiting Pluto, and Jim wanted to name this after his wife, whose name was Sharon. And it became Charon. And so there, just as they had said it in the myth thousands of years ago, Pluto and Charon took their place in the sky above us. And now, March 15th, 1999, they will go to the appointed place exactly where the mythologists said they would be 2,000, 3,000 years ago. That's a significant thing. That is a significant thing. Because nobody knew it was there. We didn't know they were out there until 1930. And then we didn't know Charon was there until 1978. Now we know they're both there, just as these people. Well, how the heck did they know they were there? See? So once again, we got to retreat back into the ancient words and see if I have an authority to look at these things as omens of tremendous change. And if you look in the Bible, you don't have to. You can if you want. But in Genesis, on the first page, in Genesis 1:4, it says, "Let there be lights in the heaven, and let them be for signs." What are you supposed to look at for signs according to the Bible? You're supposed to look at the sky. You're supposed to look at the planets. You're supposed to look at the signals that come down, because they're relayed in all of these books and documents. So it's very important for us to consider several elements of signs, because they are considered lights of the heavens, planets and celestial phenomena you have to look at. Strange words, aren't they? Pluto, Charon, Pegasus, Fornax, Aquarius. And these come into our minds as signs of change that we're all experiencing. Strange words that name the stars and the planets and the bodies. And we know people have named these, but what inspired them to name these things? Why are these things called like they are? Well, if you look in page 539, it says in Psalm 147:4, he tells the number of the stars. He calls them by name. According to the Bible, this thing you call God named all of these things. It was what you call God who gave them. God named all of these things, put them up there and said they're going to be for signs. They're going to be up there to tell you what's going to happen. And that statement is very important. The reason this is important because Pluto and Charon first turned up in the myth of the ancient Greeks. The outpost before the next world and the small gray boatman. So on March 15th, 1999, Pluto and Charon break out of the orbit of Neptune and ascend up to where a very important sign. Something is going to be in place. And if nothing else, it's going to prove the mythology of the ancient Greeks of thousands of years ago. It's right where they said it would be. Right where they said it would be. Not only is it there, it has the names that they said they would be called. How do they, could you give me you go down to Atlantic City, you want to take a bet on this one? You want to take a bet on this one? They're talking about Pluto and Charon, a small gray boatman with Pluto, who's the doorway to the next world. Take a bet that 2,000 years later, we'd find a planet sitting out as the doorway to the next world with a small gray satellite orbiting it. And then here in 1999, the name is Pluto and Charon. Take a bet on the possibilities of that. But it's there. And interesting that the guy who discovered Charon wanted to name it after his wife, whose name was Sharon. This is very, very significant. So we have two ancient writings in the Bible, and the ancient writings in Greek mythology telling us that it is the celestial bodies in the sky that will be the signs, and that it was God that named these celestial bodies to fulfill these stories. We have the wonderful passage in the Bible where the disciples asked Jesus, when are we going to experience the Passover? What is the Passover? You know, this is what I cannot get through my head, the infantile type of mentality that intelligent people have. Passover to people is to sit and light candles and eat something. We're going to have something to eat, and then that's it. Passover to us is, we're going to nail this guy up, and we're all going to go to church, and nobody cares about anything. And what it is, it's Easter dinner at Boone's Carriage House or something. We're going to have dinner. For what? Passover is a movement from one behavior, one form of life, to another form of life. And what does Jesus in Luke 22:10 on page whatever it is say when you see the Passover? They say, when are we going to have the Passover? He says, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, go into the house and go to the upper room. Who's the man with the pitcher of water? Have you ever heard a Christian identify it? They haven't a clue. I've never heard them say. Doesn't the Bible say, let the stars be for signs? Yes. Doesn't he say the man with the pitcher of water is a sign? Yes. Is there a man with a pitcher of water and the stars who's a sign? Yes. What's the name? Aquarius. Oh, we can't say that because our pastor said we're not supposed to say it. That's astrology. I mean, come on. The man with the pitcher of water is Aquarius, the first sign that really comes down to us to know that something is going to happen in the age of Aquarius. We are now in the beginning part of the age of Aquarius. The man with the pitcher of water, and stuff has happened from the time when you first invented a light bulb. Then a second sign came, and it had to do with the white horse Pegasus that I told you about, connected to the hippocampus. It was in Revelation 19:11. I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse Pegasus. So what? Don't you think if the Bible says, let the stars be for signs, that we should look in Aquarius because Jesus talked about it? And who's in Aquarius? Pegasus is a constellation in the zodiacal sign Aquarius. And what happened there? We all went through the investigation into the planetary discoveries that began in December of 1995. And the first planet that was ever found orbiting a sun star that is a twin of ours was found in the constellation Pegasus. You can find that in the stuff that you have on page 86. And right after that, you had another celestial phenomena, as if to bolster. It said in Revelation 19:14, and the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, thousands of them. And then on the stuff that I gave you on page 87, you'll see an Associated Press article which says, out of Pegasus, the Hubble telescope spots thousands of stars under the command of a giant object rushing towards the center of a globular cluster. Just like it said. Just like it said. But we don't want to look at this stuff. And you know why they don't want to look at stuff in churches? Because it's real. It really is happening. And they don't want anything to do with anything that's real. They want to say, give us the money, and then, we'll bless you, and when you die, good things will happen. And they go. Everybody goes. I want to go. Why? Because when I die, I want good things. Whoever came back and said good things happen? Nobody. But we have to believe it. People say, we got into a conversation last night about belief. I said, do you believe in God? I said, nobody's ever told me about God. Who ever told me about God? Who ever told you about God? Well, the church, the pastor. No, they told you what their interpretation of God is. So your faith is not in God. Your faith is in somebody else's interpretation. My faith is that the pastor told me the truth. My faith is that the group is it is because your group disagrees in many ways with other groups. So I don't believe. If somebody say to me, do you believe in God? I said, well, nobody ever told me about God, but I'll tell you one thing. I do not believe in their interpretation of God. Whatever God is, I have to find within myself. It has to be true to myself. I mean, I can think about chocolate cookies or I can think about enchiladas. I have to get them inside of myself in order for it to become real. Otherwise, I'm reading the menu, Then when I reach for the Tums, I know that I really have received. But it's very hard. I know it's very hard for you. It's very hard for people. I was talking to Kevin a little while ago. It's very, very difficult for people because you have been inundated into your traditions. Religion has become a nationality. It's just like you're Italian or whatever you are. I mean, it's part of it. You can't get out of it. You can't break it because you offend everybody, which is the greatest thing in the world. Nothing better than to offend people. Because at least they pay attention to, there is so much. Otherwise, they don't even look at you. And what are you? And why not? You're free. You're an individual. You're a human being. You're free. You can say yes or you can say no. You can read anything you want. You can believe anything you want. You can't have anybody else telling you, don't believe this way. So we have these angles of light foretold in the ancient scriptures, beginning to introduce new channels of behavior. Aquarius is the age that you're living in now. Pegasus has given us a sign, hasn't it? Well, I mean, you know, just say, well, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I mean, they discovered a planet orbiting a sun star in Pegasus. It never happened before. That's a sign. That's a good one. And into the mix has come supernova, 1987A. And what is it? It's an eye in the sky, a green eye in the middle of these other two eyes, looking right down at it. I mean, is this wild or what? On the front page of National Geographic, if there's somebody called God, he puts a picture of his eye looking down at everybody, and nobody pays a damn bit of attention. I'm not into that stuff, you know? But there it is. And not only is it there, it's on fire. And the scientists, because I don't want to listen to New Age people. I don't pay any attention to them. I don't pay any attention to fundamentalists. Pay attention to the scientists. You know what? Just think of this. Everything that you have in your life that is really something that you physically, as human beings, treasure, you know, your culture, your understanding, your understanding about yourself, anatomy, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, I mean, health, all of these things were given to you by this strange group of people we call the classic Greeks, who were pagans. They didn't believe, they took their gods and they shoved them on the shelf and they didn't get down to reality. And your religious foundations of people who went across this earth for years gave you absolutely nothing but superstition. You're waiting for some guy to come back on a horse. Plato and these guys didn't talk about that. Socrates didn't talk about that. Zeno talked about quantum physics and the nature of light. Democritus talked about the electrons. Hippocrates talked about medicine. Pythagoras talked about mathematics. And these guys were all pagans. And if it wasn't for the pagans, you wouldn't have a culture. You wouldn't have a Western culture that you have today. But who do we follow? The cults. So we have these angles of light. We have Aquarius. We have Pegasus giving a sign. We have supernova 1987A that we've talked about. We have Fornix. And now something else happened this week. Knowing that we are watching Pluto and Charon and their appointment on March 15th, something has occurred through the statements of scientists this week. It was on every radio station, on every television station, on CNN. There is reports on radios and television that scientists are reconsidering Pluto's position as a planet. They haven't talked about Pluto in 200 years. All of a sudden, everybody's attention is being turned to Pluto. They think, well, maybe Pluto's not a planet. I don't really care if it's a pizza. The point is it's there, and there's a little gray thing next to it. That's all I care about. Whatever they call it is irrelevant. But the point is, isn't it strange that as we're waiting for this to happen, suddenly the big deal in the science is reclassifying Pluto. All of a sudden. And we ask why. Why suddenly is the question of what Pluto is raised this week, just a few weeks from when Pluto will move into its position as the doorway to the Passover into the age of Aquarius, as a doorway to the next world in fulfillment of the myth of Pluto and Charon. This news, which was all over television, all over radio, stimulates attention of the public to Pluto. Pluto has become a center of attention to astronomers and scientists, and for those with ears and eyes, it has become an attention in the news. You would know about it. There's a very interesting point made by Calvin Hamilton in the website Views of the Solar System. And he says this: it is thought possible that Charon, Triton, and Pluto are icy worlds of the outer solar system that were not swept up by Uranus or ejected from the solar system. Isn't that interesting? You know why it's interesting? In other words, Uranus did not sweep this icy planet out of the solar system. It swept a lot of stuff out of the solar system, but it didn't. The interesting point here is that Uranus is the ruling planet of Aquarius. Okay? Uranus is the ruling planet of Aquarius. And he says that it appears that Uranus did not sweep Pluto and Charon away. There seemed to be a reason to consider that Uranus fulfilled a prophecy of the ancient myths by allowing Pluto and Charon to continue where they are. I'm not going to have your Bible jumping. I just wanted you, if you would, if you have Bibles with you, I want you to look at one reason why this is important. If you open to page 772. Page 772. I mean, this stuff is getting good. It's really getting good. And it says on page 772, Matthew chapter 3, verse 2, repent. In other words, change your way of life, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Change, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That book that you're holding, those words that you're looking at, were originally written in Greek. Let me show you. See where it says the kingdom of heaven is at hand? Let me show you the Greek word for heaven. Just look up for me for a minute, okay? This is the Greek word for heaven. O-U-R-A-N-U-S. Uranus. Matthew chapter 3, verse 2. But there is the Greek word right in front of you for heaven, and the Greek word for heaven is Uranus. And what is that saying in Greek? Change your way because the kingdom of Uranus is at hand. Well, then, if you got the wrong one, you should know by now what scripture is that.
778.
Page 770 what?
8.
What page?
778.
That's what I said. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Listen, you in the balcony. Altar girls, they get very brazen, you know, at this time. I'm sorry that that's the way it is, but I'm lucky. I come down here this morning to set up, and I'm looking around, and I said, you know, I got a funny feeling that my glasses are not on.
Oh, no.
And I looked, and then I went all over this building looking for them, and I called up. I said, Joan, check to see if my glasses are. Yes, they're on your desk next to the computer. Oh, I didn't even know they weren't on when I came down here.
You don't know.
I just said get home the same way you got
Yeah.
here.
Now let me tell you this, okay? Let me tell you what you do all the time. At least I do. I don't dwell in astrology, okay? But I let everybody do their thing, and everybody has a right to do their thing. I just don't, because basically I don't have time. I'm doing this, and you know, I don't put anything down. I do, however, treasure research that has been done relative to influences brought about to the human mind by the angles of light prompted by positions of planets. That's astrology. Uranus, we know, is the planet to turn things upside down. That's what it does. It jolts everything. It turns everything. It breaks down tradition, you know. And how clear this has been to us, you know, when you see people, and they'll say, well, God, whatever happened to the traditional family? How come women aren't home darning socks and making soup anymore? Well, they're out there, you know, having jobs like us guys, you know. What is going on? Everything's turning upside down. It's all screwed up. It's Uranus. It's Aquarius. It's the time. But I decided to look up, and I looked at Pluto, since the next big movement that we're going to have in the, and I want, you know, I can't say this strongly enough. Read the myth about Hades and Pluto and Charon, and then, you know, understand that this has occurred. So I think this is significant. And I looked at this on the internet. You know, but this is what it says about Pluto. Pluto is change. Pluto is sudden upheaval, revolt, rebellion. But it always acts in order to make better conditions. I always felt good. I felt real good about that when I read that, because that's exactly what we've talked about here. There's going to be upheaval. There's going to be rebellion. There's going to be trouble. But it is to clear out those things which have hurt people. The people that don't, the little babies in these places that don't have food. And you don't have to go to Africa or to Angola. You can go down to Mississippi. You don't have to go. You can go to Arkansas. You can see. You don't have to go there. You can go right down the highway and see where people live. And that's not right. See, it's not right that people live in poverty. It's not right that people are oppressed. I mean, it is not. What kind of superstitious crap resulted in the fact that up till 75 years ago, women in the United States weren't allowed to vote? What in the world is wrong with the mentality of people? Because of this religious evil that had permeated the minds of people, they said women are not equal to men. Well, something turned it upside down. Something changed this. Thank God. And it's part of this. But I tried to comment over and over and over that there are those who will not appreciate the changes that will come down in this cosmic Passover. They didn't like the idea of Israel and Palestine coming together, so they shot Prime Minister Begin. Do you remember? But for those who look for an upheaval, and I will tell you that part of that Pluto and Uranus upheaval will be Y2K. Well, I know there's a lot of companies that have gotten Y2K straightened out, but there is skillions of companies that haven't. But this upheaval will be to lift up the oppressed and to the poor, to restore respect to women, to nature, to stop the brutality against all life, to stop the wars and bombing so money can flow and property can be seized. That's the only reason that there have been wars and bombings and destruction of people in their homes, is so that large companies, groups, and countries could make money and take other people's property. So to all people who look to pass over to a new civilization, this upheaval will be needed to fulfill what Pluto is a sign of, an upheaval to make a better condition. When you sweep the dirt out of your house and you make your house cleaner, it's good for everybody except the dirt. It says here then, Pluto is complete transformation. Get this. It demolishes and then builds anew. So you see how there can be such confusion. It says Pluto rules death and at the same time rebirth. Since its discovery, the reincarnation theory has once more spread throughout the world. This is the death for a purpose, to be reborn again under a new and better condition. How excited I am and how excited I become when I see what I have been talking about for so long show up in these writings, of those interpreting these heavenly bodies and their meanings, especially since we see, I mean, you know, please, this change is coming in a month and a half. This is going to happen in a month and a half. Come on. We're even going to have a meditation here. I might get dressed up as Pluto. I was telling people last night, well, if you can't see Pluto with your binoculars, go down to Disneyland. He's right there. He'll shake hands with you. But, you know, when we see this change, death and rebirth, and then if you die, you remember the Zen saying that we had? You remember? You know what happened? What happens before a person leaves their body? The breath stops, right? They stop breathing. The wave collapses to a particle inside the light, and then the particle of light leaves the body. And so what we're talking about here is in meditation, I've reduced it to 3 seconds because I know I was putting a burden on people asking them to hold their breath for 10 seconds. Really, the reason was when I hold my breath for 10 seconds, I pass out. So I said 3 seconds will take care of it. 3 seconds will take care of it. Because it comes in a twinkling of an eye. So what do? You close your eyes. You say, I am watching myself. Very important for you to do that so that your mind then instructs you so that the wave field collapses inside to a part. You hold your breath for 3 seconds. That's it, 3 seconds, and then you walk. But you're starting to correct the course and coming back to the center so that the light then can get on. So in other words, you're doing the same thing while you're alive in good health that happens to people when they die. You're making contact with that light. And that's why the Zen said, if you die, before you die, then when you die, you will not die. If you die, before you die, then when you die, you will not die. And you know how easy it is for you. It doesn't cost you any money. You don't have to join anything. You can do it anywhere. You can pause when you're pulling the slot machine handle and hold your breath, close your eyes and say, I'm watching myself, and shut down. Because it's important to hold your breath, because when you hold your breath, you shut off your thoughts. 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Do it. Do it. Start to correct the course. Start to get yourself angled. Pluto and Chiron are about ready to ferry across the river Styx. Good stuff. Now, I'll be just a couple more minutes, please. But comments from the astrologer. Pluto rules the underground, that which is buried. It is secretive. It develops something undercover, and then when the time is right, it brings it out into the open and causes complete transformation. Now that is influence. It's becoming stronger. Responsibilities will undergo a complete change. So we see how strangely familiar is the effects of Pluto, consistent with Uranus and Aquarius. And this great adventure is moving itself into the place in the heavenlies. The single eye is up there. The pineal, God's pineal, single eye, the green eye looking down at us. Fornax fire is ready to light from the pineal. Pegasus, the white horse, has galloped across the universe, sending its message. And now the boatman with his boat and his little gray man is ready to ferry us across the river Styx and bring Pluto to the point of the entrance to the next world. So the Passover may take place. When? 200 years from now? No, a month and a half. And this week, the scientists and astronomers on TV and radio and all the stations brought us all to look again and prepare for the Ides of March, because they said, we want to consider Pluto. What all this is about, suggesting that these signs are so important. The movement and planets and their positioning is so important. I have told you that this is photon, which you are, and that you leave as photon, you return as photon, as light. You are light. Your body is your mother and father's and your family's. But that part that came down, that entered the body in the fetus, is that light that will leave it. 1 John 1:5. This then is the message which we have heard of him and declare unto you, that God is light. What is photon? I want you to get bumper stickers that say hunk if you love photon. Well, that really would freak them out down the highway, wouldn't it? What? So you can see why considering electromagnetism and the flow of angles of light upon the earth is so important. It's God. The question of God that you have followed all your life is revealed to you. God is light. Light is electromagnetism. It's quantum. In other words, the Bible, written by the ancient Greeks who gave you so much in astronomy and an understanding of the universes, tells you that God is light, the very light that comes streaming down upon the earth that makes your heart beat. Have you ever thought, how old are you and how come your heart's still beating? Why doesn't it ever stop? Why doesn't it shut off? What the heck is it connected to? It's got to be plugged into something to keep going all the time. And that's that electromagnetism. To change the course of behavior, this light is God. At 1 Peter 2:9 says, you are a chosen generation that you should, oh, it also says a peculiar people, I like that one, that you should show forth the praises of him who have called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Correct the course, move to the center. Calling you out of darkness, calling you to the pineal, because you are not who you are in your body. You came down from above. You are an angle of light, and you're coming back to the mother. You're coming back to the father by doing that little exercise. 1 Thessalonians 5:5, you are all the children of light. That's who your mother is. That's who your father is. Your bodies are children of your parents and your family tree, but you, the one that I'm talking to, is a child of light. You were not born on this planet Earth in some hospital. You were born as light in a distant place and sent here. You are children of light. When your time comes, you give the body back and put it. It's like I told you that I think it's a good idea. Just bear with me a couple of, but you take when the bulb can't hold the light anymore, you take the bulb out and you throw it in the garbage. But you don't throw the light with it. Where does the light go? Have you ever how many of you, raise your hands, have thrown away a lit light bulb? You can't throw away a lit light bulb. Where did the light go? The light didn't go with the bulb. You are a bulb. And when you get done, when you go to a cemetery, there's not bodies, there's all bulbs in there. Light bulbs. But what happens? Where's the light? You take another bulb. You take another body. You attach it to the power. Voila! There's the light. It's exactly what this is about. By moving in meditation at the center to the pineal, you make direct line contact with the mother, as I told you, giving thanks unto the Father which has made us partakers in this abundant light. Ephesians says, you were sometimes in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. Not as children of your parents, but as children of light. And you say to yourself, why haven't they told us this? Why haven't we understood this? Why? We're warned to stay away from ourselves. We're warned to stay away from Eastern religions. We're warned not to go into ourselves. We're warned we're going to open ourselves to demons. All of this is taught by religion. Why? Because as it says in John 3:19, this is the condemnation. And this is what these people are going to have to answer for. Light is come into the world, but men loved darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. So they have warned you away, and they have kept you away from the very light that you are. That light has come into the world. Where did it come from? How has it come? It has come from above as an angle of light, but it has been rejected by the teachings of religion. But now Aquarius is here, Uranus is here, Supernova is here, Fornax is here, Pluto and Charon are here, and it is time to walk with them into the light.